Your mind is focused on the little things, the tasks ahead, the emails you need to respond to, the call you need to make, but what you don't expect is that in the blink of an eye, your entire life could change forever. A simple mix-up, an accidental bag switch. Nothing too alarming, right? Well, not exactly. Because this is the kind of story where one small mistake sets off a chain of events that no one could have ever predicted. You think it's just a bag. But this bag. It's more than just leather and zippers. It's the beginning of something far more sinister, far more dangerous than you could imagine. But hold on. You're probably thinking, a switched bag? Is this really something that could change someone's life? And that's exactly the point. Sometimes, the most seemingly insignificant moments are the ones that alter the course of our entire existence. That seemingly innocent bag swap? Well, it leads to a twist that no one could see coming. It's the kind of story that makes you question everything you thought you knew about trust, about safety, about control. You're going to want to stick with me on this one, because I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how one small mistake can spiral into a nightmare you never saw coming. Before we get into it, let me ask you a question. How often do you really pay attention to your surroundings? Think about the times you've been in an elevator, or maybe in a crowded space, and how many things you ignore or take for granted. The people, the noises, the items around you. We tend to focus on what's directly in front of us and miss the things that could change our lives forever. This story, though, is a reminder that even in those most mundane, routine moments, the unexpected is lurking just beneath the surface. It's in the small decisions, the things we don't think twice about. It's in the bag you pick up, and the one you leave behind. Now, let me introduce you to the key players in this wild tale. Our main character, let's call her Lily, is just a normal woman. She's got a job she's trying to keep up with, friends she's trying to stay connected with, and a life that, for the most part, is pretty predictable. But all of that is about to change in the most unsettling way. On one fateful day, Lily enters an elevator on the way up to her office, just like any other day. She's feeling a little rushed, a little distracted. Maybe it's the busy week at work or the chaotic morning she had getting her kids ready. Either way, she's not fully present when she steps in. The elevator dings, and another woman, someone she's never seen before, enters just before the doors close. The woman's holding a large purse that looks almost identical to Lily's. For a moment, the two exchange a polite glance, but no words are exchanged. The elevator ride is quiet, routine, until it's not. At the next floor, the doors open, and the woman exits, leaving behind the exact same bag Lily had been holding just moments ago. Lily, caught off guard but not thinking too much of it, assumes the woman had simply left in a hurry. So, in a hurry herself, she picks up the bag left behind and moves on with her day. No harm done, right? But as she walks out of the elevator, something feels off. The weight of the bag is different. It feels wrong. As if something's missing. Lily brushes it off as her imagination, thinking she's just being paranoid. After all, it's just a bag. But then things begin to unfold. The moment she reaches her office, Lily notices that this bag isn't hers. It's not just the contents, it's the way it feels, the way it's arranged. The items inside are unfamiliar, and there's one thing in particular that catches her eye. A small, seemingly innocuous object buried deep in the bottom of the bag. It's an item that, on its own, wouldn't mean much to anyone else. But to Lily, it's a clue, something that doesn't add up. It's a sign that the bag she's holding has far more significance than she could have ever imagined. Now, at this point, you might be wondering, what's the big deal? It's just a bag. It's just an accidental mix-up. But here's the twist. This bag isn't just a bag. It's a message. And in the world Lily finds herself in now, everything is connected. Every little detail, every piece of the puzzle that's starting to come together. And let me tell you, this bag will soon be the key to unlocking a much darker and more dangerous mystery. But here's the catch. Lily doesn't know any of this yet. She's still piecing it all together, thinking that she'll simply return the bag, move on, and everything will go back to normal. But in reality, the second that woman walked out of that elevator, Lily's life took a hard turn. The things she's about to discover. They will force her to confront fears she never knew she had. to challenge her understanding of trust, and ultimately, to decide just how far she's willing to go to uncover the truth. Here's where it gets even more intense. As Lily digs deeper into the contents of the bag, strange things begin to happen. People she doesn't know start showing up in her life, acting in ways that feel eerily familiar. Conversations she didn't think she had, places she's never been before, and a sense of being followed. All of it comes to a head when she receives an unexpected visitor at her door, someone who knows everything about her, her family, and this very bag. This is just the beginning, my friends. The story you're about to hear is filled with twists and turns, secrets that go deeper than Lily could ever have expected, and a life-or-death situation that none of us could predict. If you've ever wondered how something as simple as a bag could change everything, then you're about to find out. But I'm not going to give you all the answers just yet. So, I'll ask you again, are you ready to find out what happens when your life is thrown into chaos over a simple mistake? Because this one is going to keep you on the edge of your seat until the very end. Stay with me, and we'll unravel this together. Lily's life, at least on the surface, seemed like a picture of normalcy. She had a steady job as a marketing executive at a well-established firm in downtown Chicago, a city she had moved to just a few years ago to chase a career she was passionate about. Her apartment was cozy, tucked away on the 14th floor of a high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered stunning views of the skyline. She'd spend her weekends enjoying the city's cafes, meeting friends for brunch, or walking along the lakefront. She had friends she trusted, a partner she adored. Everything seemed to be in its place. But that feeling of stability, the calmness that wrapped her life, was starting to fray at the edges. Over the past few months, Lily had been increasingly distant, though she didn't fully realize it at the time. She found herself staying late at work, putting in extra hours to get ahead of an ambitious new project. It was a challenging but rewarding task, and the pressure to deliver something exceptional weighed heavily on her shoulders. Her boss had been pushing for a major presentation to clients, and the stakes felt higher than ever. She wanted to prove herself. Yet, in the process, she had become somewhat detached from her personal life. Her friends had noticed the absence, her partner had remarked on how much she seemed to retreat into her work. But it was just the kind of thing she would brush off, a necessary phase, she told herself. Nothing out of the ordinary. It was around this time, when everything seemed to be building up, that Lily began to feel watched. The sensation was subtle at first, like a lingering feeling that someone was observing her. She'd get strange calls at odd hours, hang-up calls that she could never trace. She assumed it was just wrong numbers or some telemarketer trying to get through, but when it kept happening, the unease began to creep in. Little things started to stand out in ways they never had before. There was the email she received that didn't seem to come from anyone in her network, filled with vague but unsettling language that hinted at knowing far too much about her. It didn't say anything overtly threatening, but it was just specific enough to make her feel uncomfortable. Lily had dismissed these thoughts as paranoia. After all, life in the city could be overwhelming at times, and being stressed out from her workload didn't exactly help. Still, the nagging feeling persisted, like a constant hum just beneath the surface. So, when she stepped into that elevator on that particular morning, she didn't give much thought to the woman who entered just moments before the doors closed. She didn't even think twice about the bag she picked up, assuming it was just a simple mistake. It was a busy morning, she was preoccupied, and there were plenty of other things demanding her attention. But now, as the weight of the bag settled in her hands, something inside her told her that this was more than just a coincidence. The woman had acted strange, too almost hurried, as if she was running away from something. Lily tried to recall her face, but it was blurry, a fleeting image in her mind, leaving her with the impression of a woman trying too hard to appear calm when everything seemed to be falling apart. Lily thought of calling her office's front desk to report the mix-up, maybe just leave a note for the woman. But then her curiosity got the better of her, and instead of acting on her initial impulse, she opened the bag. It was like something was pulling her in, urging her to look deeper. What she found inside made her heart race. The items weren't what she expected, they were too personal, too strange. But it wasn't just the unfamiliarity of the items that unsettled her, it was the feeling that something was being hidden in plain sight, as if whoever had owned this bag was trying to send a message. Among the mix of mundane objects, lipstick, a worn notebook, a phone charger, there was a small, encrypted USB drive. It wasn't something you would expect to find in a random bag, and it definitely wasn't something Lily would have expected to be involved with. She didn't know why, but she immediately felt as if the bag had been waiting for her. As if it had been meant for her all along. Her first instinct was to return the bag. She would just find the woman, explain the situation, and everything would go back to normal. But as she stood in her office, staring at the drive, the thought of handing it over seemed impossible. It was as if something inside her was warning her, telling her that whatever was on that drive could change everything. For the first time in a long while, she realized how deeply she was entangled in something that she didn't fully understand. The following days felt off. Her routine became unpredictable. The strange feeling that she was being followed grew stronger, but there was no one she could point to. She kept seeing the same faces in different places, people who didn't seem to notice her but whose presence made her feel like she was being watched. One evening, when she was leaving her office late, she spotted a familiar face, a man who had been walking the same route as her for several days. At first, she thought it was a coincidence, but after seeing him several times, her suspicion turned into certainty. He was always just a little too close. Always looking in her direction. The man's presence unsettled her, but there was something about his demeanor that made her hesitate. Could he be connected to the bag? Was he following her because he knew something? Or was she just unraveling, letting her fear get the better of her? The final straw came when, just days after the elevator incident, Lily received a phone call from an unlisted number. When she picked up, she heard nothing but a faint click on the other end before the line went dead. Then came the text message. A single line of text that chilled her to the bone. "I know what's in the bag." It wasn't just the message that shook her, it was the tone. It wasn't a threat, exactly, but it carried a weight that Lily couldn't explain. Whoever was behind this knew something she didn't. Something big. Something dangerous. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized she had walked into a web of lies and deceit that she had no idea how to untangle. Now, Lily had no choice but to dive deeper into the mystery. She needed answers. But each step she took only seemed to lead her down a darker, more confusing path. The people in her life, her boss, her co-workers, her partner, were all acting strangely. It was as though there was a secret she wasn't privy to, and every time she got closer to the truth, they pushed her away. She couldn't tell if it was paranoia or if she was actually in danger. But one thing was clear. Whoever was behind this, whoever had orchestrated the switch, wasn't just interested in a misplaced bag. They wanted something more. And Lily was about to find out exactly what. But as she gathered her courage to confront the people around her, she began to realize that she might be far too deep into this than she ever imagined. The deeper she dug, the more she started to question, who could she trust? Could the people she cared about be involved in this? Or were they just pawns in a game she didn't even know she was playing? And more terrifyingly, was she the one who had been targeted all along, or had she somehow stumbled into something much larger than herself? The answers were out there, hidden in plain sight. But uncovering them would come at a price. A price Lily wasn't sure she was willing to pay. Lily couldn't shake the feeling that the walls around her were closing in. Each day seemed to add a new layer of pressure, each moment intensifying the mystery. The encrypted USB drive in her possession had become her obsession. She had spent hours trying to decipher it, using every tool and technique she could find, but nothing worked. The encryption was too advanced, too complex for someone with her limited knowledge of tech. The more she tried to break it open, the more frustrated and helpless she became. At first, she thought it was just a matter of time, she would figure it out, or someone would help her. But then, something unexpected happened that changed everything. Late one night, as Lily was sitting at her kitchen table, running another attempt to crack the code on her laptop, she noticed something strange. The USB drive, which had been sitting innocently on the edge of her desk, was gone. She stood up, heart pounding, convinced she must have misplaced it. She searched every corner of her apartment, moving through her living room, retracing her steps, but it was nowhere to be found. She felt a cold chill run down her spine as the room seemed to shrink around her. She couldn't believe it. There was no way it could have just disappeared. She was sure she had left it on the table. Had someone been in her apartment? Had someone taken it? Her pulse raced as she checked every drawer, every cabinet. But there was no sign of the drive. The apartment was eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that felt too still, too unnatural. Lily tried to calm herself, but the rational part of her mind was quickly losing ground to the fear gnawing at her. She thought about the people who'd been around her lately, the man she'd seen following her, the strange messages, and the feeling of being watched. This was more than just a bag mix-up. Whoever was behind this had been keeping track of her every move. And now they had taken the one piece of evidence that could prove everything. It was the final straw that sent her mind spiraling. Was this all a game? Had she been playing right into their hands the entire time? The next day, when she showed up to work, things were no better. Her boss, Michael, had been acting distant ever since the presentation project had wrapped up. Normally, he was a steady, supportive figure, but recently, there had been a tension in his eyes, like he was avoiding her gaze. She chalked it up to work stress, but now, looking back, she began to wonder if he knew more than he was letting on. When she tried to ask him about the mysterious behavior at the office, he deflected, giving vague responses that didn't sit right with her. It was as if he was hiding something important. And then, there was the way his assistant, Emma, had been acting. She'd always been friendly, but now, every time Lily looked at her, she felt like there was something unspoken between them. She wasn't sure if it was paranoia or something more, but the idea that someone close to her might be involved in this was unsettling. That night, Lily decided to confront Emma. She waited until after hours, when the office was mostly empty. She knew she could trust Emma, they'd been friends for years, and there was no reason to think she was involved. But she needed answers, and she was willing to risk it all for the truth. When Emma arrived at the small cafe where they met, she seemed nervous, distracted. Lily could tell something was off the second she sat down. The small talk between them felt forced, strained, like there was an invisible wall between them. "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this, Lily," Emma finally confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're getting too close to something you shouldn't. People don't want you to find out. You have to stop digging. Please, just let it go." Lily froze, her heart skipping a beat. This wasn't the Emma she knew. She was being warned, no, threatened, by her friend, and the fear in Emma's eyes was enough to send a chill down Lily's spine. But why? What was Emma involved in? Lily had no answers, only more questions. Before she could press Emma further, the conversation was interrupted by a sudden phone call. It was from an unknown number, but the voice on the other end was unmistakable. "I told you to stop," the voice growled. It was the same ominous tone she had heard in the earlier text message, and it sent a shock of realization through her. Whoever this was, they weren't playing around. She wasn't just dealing with a random series of events. She was caught up in something deliberate, something planned. The question was, who was behind it? And why was Emma so afraid? Lily knew she couldn't back down now. She had to figure this out. She couldn't just let the people around her dictate what she could and couldn't discover. But with every piece of the puzzle, the stakes grew higher, and the danger was becoming undeniable. Later that evening, as Lily tried to digest the conversation with Emma, something strange happened again. She received another package in the mail, this time a small, anonymous envelope with no return address. Inside, she found a black and white photo of herself, taken through a window. It was blurry, but the timing of the photo was clear. It had been taken earlier that same day, while she was speaking with Emma. How did they know? Who was watching her? The fear that had been building in her chest now turned into full-blown terror. But just as she was about to reach out to the police, something unexpected happened. She heard a knock on her door, followed by the sound of a soft, almost casual voice calling her name. It was a man, someone she hadn't seen before, standing just outside her apartment. He was tall, well-dressed, his face friendly but with an intensity in his eyes that made her stomach drop. Without any formal introduction, he slid a small envelope through the crack in the door. "You're in over your head," he said, his voice cold but eerily calm. "You need to stop before it's too late. There's more to this than you can understand. Trust me, you're not ready for the truth." Lily stood frozen, her mind racing. Who was he? And what was he trying to say? Was he just another piece of this twisted puzzle, Or was he trying to help? The more she thought about it, the less certain she became. The envelope remained in her hand, but she didn't dare open it. The more she tried to make sense of it, the less everything seemed to add up. In that moment, Lily realized she was standing on the precipice of something far darker than she could have imagined. But the question now wasn't just how to uncover the truth, it was whether she was ready to face the consequences of uncovering it. Because whatever came next, it would be impossible to undo. Lily stared at her phone, the buzzing sensation still echoing through her hand as her eyes scanned the message on the screen. It wasn't a threat this time, but it didn't feel like any kind of relief either. The message was simple, short, and carried an unsettling weight. It's time for you to know the truth. You won't like what you find. The text was from an unknown number, but it didn't take long for Lily's heart to sink as she recognized the message for what it was: another warning, another piece of the puzzle. She hadn't expected to feel more confused than she already had, but now, everything seemed even more convoluted. Who was sending these cryptic messages? Was it the same person who had been tracking her every move, or was this someone else entirely? And if it was someone else, why were they involved? Her mind raced as she tried to piece together what she knew. She had no real answers, only a deeper sense of dread that felt like it was closing in from all sides. Every person around her seemed to be a suspect, each with their own secrets, their own reasons for being involved in this twisted game. And just when Lily thought she couldn't feel any more isolated, the doorbell rang again. This time, it wasn't just a messenger with more cryptic clues, it was her partner, Jake. He had been out of town for the past few days on a work trip, and they hadn't had a chance to speak since she'd become entangled in this bizarre situation. He had always been supportive, the calm to her storm, but something about the way he stood at the door now, his face tense and unreadable, made her hesitate before letting him in. "I got a strange call," Jake said, his voice tight with an edge she hadn't heard before. "Someone warned me to keep an eye on you. Told me to make sure you stop looking into things. To back off." Lily's heart skipped a beat. The mention of the warning was enough to make her blood run cold. Who would send such a message to Jake? Was it the same person who had been threatening her, or was this a new player in the game? She tried to remain composed, to keep her panic in check, but the truth was, she had no idea who to trust anymore. Jake had always been her rock, the person she confided in, the one who stood by her when everything seemed impossible. But the fear that was building inside her made her question everything. What if he knew more than he was letting on? What if he was part of the reason things had spiraled out of control? Was he a pawn in someone else's game, or was he the one pulling the strings? Jake seemed to notice her hesitation, his eyes softening as he stepped closer. "Lily, what's really going on? I can tell something's wrong. You're not telling me everything." The vulnerability in his voice made her want to believe him. She wanted to believe that Jake was just as confused and scared as she was. But something deep down told her that this was no longer just about the bag or the cryptic messages. This was about something bigger, something neither of them could fully comprehend. As they sat down, trying to process everything, Lily's phone buzzed once more. She had received another message. This time, it wasn't from the same unknown number. Instead, the sender was disturbingly familiar: Emma, the assistant at work. Lily's stomach churned. Why would Emma reach out to her now, especially after their last conversation? The text read, "I didn't want you to find out like this, but you need to know, you're not the first one. There have been others before you, and they didn't make it out. Get away while you still can." Lily's breath caught in her throat as she read the message again, her fingers trembling. What did Emma mean by others? Her thoughts spiraled as she tried to connect the dots. Who were the others? What happened to them? And most importantly, why was Emma suddenly warning her? Her instincts screamed at her to call Emma, to demand answers, but she was afraid of what that conversation might reveal. What if Emma had been involved in something far more dangerous than she'd let on? Or worse, what if Emma wasn't the ally she had always appeared to be? But just as the weight of Emma's message settled over her, another unexpected twist came her way. Jake's phone buzzed with a new notification, and when he glanced down at it, his face went pale. "Lily, this is going to sound crazy, but I just got a strange message too." He handed her the phone, his hands shaking. The message was simple, cryptic, and chilling. The clock is ticking. Don't trust the people closest to you. You're all in too deep. Lily's mind raced as she processed what she was seeing. Don't trust the people closest to you. Was that a warning for her, or was it meant for Jake? The implications were terrifying. Was there someone working against them both? Was someone feeding them disinformation, trying to break them apart? Or was it possible that Jake, her partner, the person she had trusted more than anyone, was somehow involved in this twisted web of deception? The longer she sat there, the more her sense of reality began to warp. She thought she understood the situation, that she had a grip on what was happening around her. But now, everything seemed to be coming undone. Each new message, each new warning only deepened the confusion. Every person she turned to for answers seemed to be part of a bigger, darker conspiracy she couldn't yet see. Just when Lily thought she couldn't take it anymore, her phone vibrated once again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a video. The thumbnail was a grainy, poorly lit image, but it was enough to make her stomach drop. She clicked on it, and the video started playing. At first, it was just static, the image flickering in and out of focus. Then, slowly, the camera focused in on a face someone Lily recognized. It was her boss, Michael. He was sitting at a table, his hands folded in front of him, his face drawn with exhaustion. The camera zoomed in, and Michael's voice came through the speaker. "I'm sorry, Lily. I never meant for it to go this far. But you have to understand, there's no going back now. You've seen too much. I've tried to protect you, but I don't know if it's enough." The video ended abruptly, leaving Lily in stunned silence. What had Michael meant? What had he tried to protect her from? And why did it feel like everyone she'd ever known was now somehow complicit in this growing nightmare? As the weight of this new revelation sank in, Lily realized that there was only one thing she was sure of now: she had no idea who was really on her side anymore. The game she was caught in had shifted, and everyone around her seemed to have their own hidden agendas. It wasn't just about the bag anymore. It was about something far more dangerous, far more secretive. And Lily was about to learn that no one, not even the people closest to her, could be trusted. The next few days felt like a blur for Lily, each moment weighed down by the constant, gnawing uncertainty that had invaded her life. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong. She'd always been a level-headed person, someone who faced challenges with clear thinking, but this was something different. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every noise sent her heart into a panic. It wasn't just the messages or the strange encounters, it was the overwhelming sense that something was closing in on her. The worst part was that she couldn't even explain it, couldn't pinpoint the exact moment when she started feeling this way. But she knew, deep down, that she was being watched. It started with the feeling that someone was always a step behind her. She'd glance over her shoulder as she walked through the city, her heart pounding in her chest, convinced she saw the same figure at the edge of her vision, always just out of reach, but always there. She'd take the long way home, trying to lose them in the crowd, but the sensation never left. It was as though her entire world had turned into a maze of eyes and whispers, all pointing toward her. But it wasn't until the night she got home late from work that the real terror began to set in. She had come back to her apartment just like any other day, feeling drained from the chaos, hoping to escape into the comfort of her own space. But as soon as she opened the door, the silence felt wrong. It was too quiet, too still, like something had shifted, and she wasn't sure if she was walking into her own home anymore. The moment she stepped inside, a shiver crawled down her spine, and she instinctively checked the lock on the door, double-locking it. The apartment felt suffocating, the air thick with tension, as if someone had just been there, watching her. She walked through the apartment, checking every room, her steps cautious, almost hesitant. But it wasn't until she reached the bedroom that the fear truly sank in. Her bedroom door was ajar. She never left it open. And the sight that greeted her inside was enough to make her blood run cold. Her desk, where she kept her laptop, her notes, everything she'd been working on, was in disarray. Papers scattered across the floor, her personal items rifled through. It was as if someone had been searching for something. The USB drive, the one she had guarded so closely, was gone. Just like that. Her mind raced, but she couldn't move. It was like her body was frozen in place, Her eyes locked onto the empty space where the drive had once been. It felt like she was suffocating, like the walls were closing in around her. She had always believed she could handle any challenge, but this was different. The room, once a place of safety, now felt like a cage, and the realization hit her harder than anything else had. Whoever had been messing with her wasn't just playing games anymore. They were in her life. They had been in her home. And now, they had something of hers, something that could ruin everything she had worked for. Panic gripped her chest, but before she could even process what to do next, her phone buzzed. It was another message, and this time, the words were simple, direct, and terrifying. You should have stopped when you had the chance. Lily's breath caught in her throat. The gravity of the situation was no longer something she could ignore. She wasn't just a victim of some strange bag switch anymore, she was a target. Someone was after her. Someone who knew exactly what she was doing, and now, they were taking things to an entirely new level. She glanced around her apartment, as though expecting someone to leap from the shadows, but there was no one. Just the mess. Just the emptiness. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Jake. Lily, where are you? His voice sounded frantic, his usual calmness gone. I can't reach you. There's something going on, something big. You have to leave. Now. Her pulse quickened. Something big. What did he mean? Was he in danger too? Was she supposed to leave? She was already on edge, the world around her feeling like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. But why would Jake be telling her to leave now? Was he part of this? The thought hit her like a ton of bricks. She hadn't seen Jake in the chaos of the last few days. He'd been distracted, his messages strange. Now, he was telling her to leave. Why? Could he be involved in this too? Lily's hand trembled as she held the phone. The room seemed to close in tighter with each passing second. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. All she wanted was to be safe, to know the truth. But the truth was slipping through her fingers faster than she could grasp it. What was she supposed to do now? Just as she was about to respond to Jake's frantic call, there was a knock on the door. A hard, urgent knock that made her freeze in place. She hadn't told anyone where she was, and it was too late for a visitor to just show up. Her heart skipped a beat as the knock sounded again, louder this time, demanding her attention. With her head pounding and her thoughts scattered, Lily moved slowly toward the door, every instinct telling her to hide, to run, to not open it. But what if it was Jake? What if it was someone who could help? The thought of not knowing, of leaving it unanswered, felt worse than facing whatever stood on the other side. She reached the door and peered through the peephole. It was a man she didn't recognize. Tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in black, he stood there, his posture rigid, his eyes trained directly at the door, as if waiting for her to make a move. Lily's heart slammed against her ribs. Was he the one watching her? Was he the one who had been in her apartment? She reached for the phone again, her fingers shaking, but before she could dial, the man outside spoke, his voice low, almost menacing. I know you're in there. I think it's time we had a conversation, don't you? Panic shot through Lily's veins. She wanted to scream, wanted to run, but her legs felt like lead. Her thoughts scattered in a million directions. Was this man another piece of the puzzle, or was he the final piece that would shatter her world? What did he want from her? The minutes felt like hours as she stood paralyzed, staring at the door. Every instinct screamed at her to get out, to escape. But escape where? Who could she trust? Then, before she could make any decision, the man knocked again. The sound was louder this time, harsher, as if the weight of whatever was about to happen was coming crashing down. It wasn't just the bag, it wasn't just the drive, it was something much more dangerous, something deeper than she had ever imagined. And Lily realized, in that moment, that there was no going back. She was caught in the middle of something far more deadly than she had ever anticipated. And whoever was behind it was making sure she wouldn't survive to tell the tale. Lily's heart was pounding in her chest, the man's voice outside the door still echoing in her mind. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. She had never been this scared in her life, and the walls of her apartment seemed to be closing in on her. The darkness of the room felt oppressive, like it was swallowing her whole. She stood frozen, her phone still clenched tightly in her hand, staring at the door, trying to make sense of everything. What had started as an unsettling bag switch and cryptic messages had spiraled into something far worse. She thought she understood the situation, thought she had begun to piece together the motives, the players, and the dangers that loomed. But everything had changed in an instant. The man at the door. The frantic calls. The cryptic messages. The sense that something was slowly unraveling just beneath the surface. But as she stood there, the weight of her own fear gripping her like a vice, she heard something that made her freeze even further, a soft click. The sound of the lock on her apartment door being disengaged. For a moment, Lily's mind went completely blank. She hadn't touched the lock. No one else was supposed to be here. She backed away slowly, her hand instinctively reaching for the nearby lamp, her mind racing for some sort of plan, but all she could do was listen as the door creaked open. It was then, as the door swung wide, that she saw him, Jake. But this wasn't the Jake she had known. His face was hard, unreadable, like a mask of someone else entirely. He wasn't the calm, reassuring partner she had confided in for so long. No, this man standing before her was someone different. Someone darker. Jake, Lily whispered, her voice barely a breath. She couldn't understand it, couldn't make sense of what she was seeing. This wasn't right. This wasn't the man she loved, the person who had always had her back. This was someone else entirely. He didn't smile, didn't even acknowledge her. Instead, he stepped into the room, his gaze never leaving hers. There was something about the way he moved, the coldness in his eyes, that sent a wave of dread washing over her. "I think it's time you learned the truth, Lily," he said, his voice low, devoid of emotion. He didn't sound like the man who had been comforting her just days ago. This wasn't the Jake who had been warning her to leave or the one who had seemed just as afraid as she was. This was a man with a purpose, a man who had been playing a role all along. Lily's mind reeled. "What are you talking about? What's going on? Why did you say those things to me?" Her voice cracked, but she couldn't stop herself. "Why did you let me think I was in danger?" Jake took another step forward, his expression hardening. "I didn't let you think you were in danger, Lily. I put you in danger." The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. Her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She stumbled back, her legs unsteady beneath her as the world she thought she knew began to shatter before her eyes. "You've been working with them all along," Lily whispered, the horror creeping into her voice. She was shaking now, unable to hide the terror that was coursing through her. Jake didn't respond right away. Instead, he just stood there, his gaze locked onto hers. The silence stretched out, thick with the tension of years of secrets unraveling in a matter of seconds. But then Jake spoke again, his words slow, deliberate, as though he was savoring the moment. "I wasn't the one you should have been worried about, Lily. It's never been about the bag. It's never been about the messages or the cryptic clues. All of that was just smoke and mirrors. The real game is much bigger than you think." Lily could feel her pulse racing, her mind racing to process what he was saying. What game? What was he talking about? She had trusted him more than anyone. And now, all of it, everything she thought she knew, was crumbling away. Before she could respond, Jake took a deep breath and stepped closer. "You remember Emma, don't you?" He paused, letting the name hang in the air like a weight. Lily's throat went dry. Of course she remembered Emma. She had trusted Emma, confided in her. But there was something in Jake's tone that made her stomach churn. It wasn't just the mention of Emma's name, it was the way he said it, like he knew something she didn't. "Emma, she's been helping me," Jake continued, his voice lowering, almost conspiratorial. "But not in the way you think. She's been part of the plan from the beginning. You were never meant to find out about the bag, about the drive, about any of it. You were just a pawn, a distraction. The real objective is you." Lily's breath hitched. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" She shook her head in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. Jake, her partner, the one person she had trusted, was working against her. It was all a lie. She felt as though the ground beneath her had vanished. The reality she had built her life upon was now a facade, a lie she had been living in without even knowing it. "I was assigned to keep an eye on you," Lily, Jake said coldly, his eyes finally meeting hers with a look that sent a chill through her bones. I wasn't the one you should have been trusting. They needed you to get close, to get to the drive, and to start asking questions. And when you did, you made yourself a liability. You became dangerous. Lily felt the air leave her lungs, the world spinning around her. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Who are they? Who's behind all of this? Jake's lips twisted into a bitter smile. I think you already know the answer to that, Lily. You've been looking in all the wrong places. And just like that, everything she thought she understood about her life, about what had been happening, collapsed. The man she had trusted, the woman she had confided in, the cryptic messages, the warning signs, everything was part of a larger scheme, a plan she had been unknowingly caught up in. And now, as Jake's final words settled in, she realized something even more terrifying. She was far deeper into this than she could have ever imagined. The game had changed, and she wasn't just a pawn anymore. She was the target. As Lily's mind reeled, trying to process what Jake had said, the door slammed shut behind her. She turned, desperate for an escape, but the room seemed to close in around her, the walls constricting like they were closing off any chance of salvation. And just as she thought there was no way out, she heard the sound of another door opening behind her, a soft, sinister click that told her everything she needed to know. It was too late. Lily's pulse raced as she turned toward the sound, fear surging through her body. The truth had been right in front of her all along, and now, it was too late to undo the damage. The walls of Lily's apartment seemed to close in on her, the reality of Jake's betrayal settling in like a heavy weight, making it hard to breathe. Her heart hammered in her chest as she tried to wrap her mind around the truth he had just revealed. It felt like everything she had built her life on was crumbling, falling apart in the span of a few brutal sentences. She had trusted him. She had loved him. And now, here he was, standing before her, a cold stranger with no trace of the man she had thought she knew. It was like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Every part of her wanted to run, to escape, but where would she go? How could she even trust herself to make the right choices anymore when everyone was a lie? Jake stood in front of her, his expression unreadable, his eyes colder than she had ever seen them. He hadn't even flinched when she backed away from him. No remorse, no apology, just the same icy gaze. You're in deeper than you think, Lily, he said, his voice smooth, calculated. The decision's yours now. The clock's ticking. Lily's mind raced as the weight of his words hit her. The decision's yours. What did that even mean? Was he giving her a choice? The entire situation felt like a twisted game, a chessboard where every move had a consequence, and she was losing. But what choice was there? She had no answers, no direction, just a growing sense of desperation. She wasn't prepared for any of this. You've been manipulating me from the start, she whispered, her voice breaking, the words cutting her deeper than she wanted to admit. Why? Why didn't you just tell me the truth? Jake's lips twisted into a tight, almost sadistic smile. The truth is dangerous, Lily. You were never supposed to know about any of it. But now, here we are. And now you're faced with a choice. He stepped closer, his tone suddenly serious, the weight of the moment pressing down on her like a physical force. You can walk away, forget about everything, go back to your little life. You can pretend none of this ever happened. Or, he trailed off, his gaze flicking toward the door, as if weighing the gravity of the moment before meeting her eyes again. You can choose the truth. But that comes with consequences. Not just for you. For everyone you care about. The last part of his sentence hit like a punch to the gut. Everyone you care about. Lily's mind reeled. Her thoughts flashed to Emma, to her family, to the people in her life who had no idea what was happening, who were completely unaware of the danger that was closing in. She had no way of knowing who else was involved or who was part of this web of lies. But she knew, deep down, that if she chose the truth, she wouldn't just be risking her own safety. She would be putting everyone around her in danger. It was a choice that felt impossible, and yet she knew she had no choice at all. Jake, please, her voice trembled, the desperation evident in her words. I don't know what you want from me. I just want to understand what's happening. Why are you doing this? Jake's expression darkened, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of something. Something almost human. "I didn't want this to happen either," he said quietly, as though the words were forced from him. "But you pushed me into it. You kept digging when you should have stopped. You've already made yourself a target, and now you're too far gone. The truth is a weapon, Lily. And now, you're holding it." The intensity of his words seemed to hang in the air, suffocating her, making her question everything she thought she knew. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, the quiet intensity of the moment pressing down on her chest. It was as if the universe was narrowing its focus on this single, impossible decision. Her mind screamed for a way out, but there was no escape. The truth had already been set in motion, and it was up to her to decide how far she was willing to go to uncover it. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. She glanced down, praying it wasn't another cryptic message, but the name on the screen stopped her dead in her tracks. Emma. Her stomach churned. She hadn't spoken to Emma in days, not since everything had started spiraling out of control. Was she calling to check on her, or was she somehow involved in all of this too? Lily hesitated, torn between the phone and Jake's unwavering presence in front of her. Should she take the call? Should she ask Emma what was really going on? Was Emma the ally she had always thought she was, or was she somehow connected to the very thing Lily had been running from? With a shaky hand, she answered the call, her voice barely audible as she said, "Emma?" The silence on the other end of the line was almost suffocating before Emma's voice finally came through, strained and rushed. "Lily, listen to me. You need to get out of there. Now. Now, before it's too late." Her tone was frantic, almost as though she was talking through clenched teeth, and Lily's heart skipped a beat. "Emma, what's going on? What are you talking about? What are you involved in?" Lily couldn't help herself. The words spilled out in a rush of fear and confusion. The truth, it seemed, was slipping through her fingers faster than she could grasp it. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had been betrayed by everyone she trusted. But Emma's response was far more chilling than she could have expected. "Lily, you don't understand. It's not just Jake. It's everyone. This thing, this situation you're in, it's bigger than you could ever imagine. And I'm trying to protect you. You have to trust me. But you can't stay there. You need to leave now." Her voice cracked, and Lily could hear the urgency in every syllable. Before Lily could say another word, the line went dead. Her mind raced. Her thoughts collided in a whirlwind of confusion and fear. What was Emma trying to tell her? Why had she said that? And then, in that instant, the full weight of the decision hit her. Jake's ultimatum wasn't just a choice between truth and safety. It was a choice between the life she thought she knew and the life she would be forced to live if she chose to uncover everything. Could she leave and protect herself and her loved ones, or did she dare to push forward, risking everything to uncover the truth, even if it meant losing everything she had? She looked at Jake, who stood silent and unyielding, waiting for her response, but she didn't know what to say. The decision was hers. And the clock was ticking. Lily's breath caught in her throat as she realized there was no easy answer. No matter what she chose, there would be consequences. There would be no way to go back to the life she had known. The truth, it seemed, had already sealed her fate. The only question now was how far she was willing to go to confront it. Would she face the unknown and risk everything, or would she walk away, never knowing what might have been? The silence between them stretched long and heavy, suffocating, as Lily made the hardest choice of her life. Lily's mind was racing, her body tense, every instinct telling her to run, but she couldn't. There was no way out. The world she thought she knew had vanished, and all she had left were fractured pieces of the truth, fragments of a reality she was struggling to piece together. Jake's betrayal was only the beginning. The urgency of Emma's warning, the twisted game Jake had set in motion, all of it had led her to this single, heart-stopping moment. But as she stood there, in the thick silence of her apartment, staring at the man she thought she knew, she realized the stakes were much higher than she could have ever imagined. This wasn't just about her. This wasn't just a fight for her safety, her truth. This was a conspiracy that reached further than she could have ever guessed, pulling more people into its web than she ever thought possible. She had been a pawn in their game all along. Jake's cold, calculating gaze never wavered as he watched her, knowing full well the storm that was brewing in her mind. But now, he was the calm in the chaos, the puppeteer pulling the strings. "You can't run from this, Lily," he said, his voice low but firm. "You've already stepped into something you don't understand. And the people you're trusting, they're not who you think they are." Lily felt a chill run down her spine. Emma. She had trusted Emma. She had confided in her, believed her to be the one person who could help her find the truth. But now, she wasn't so sure. Could Emma have been part of this from the beginning? Could she have been orchestrating this entire thing with Jake, pulling the strings all along? The thought made her stomach turn, but it also made her realize just how deep the deception went. Emma, Jake, they were only pieces of a much larger puzzle. And she was in the middle of it, unable to see the entire picture. Before she could gather her thoughts, the door to her apartment slammed open, and Lily's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just anyone. It was Victor. The man she had known from the very start of this nightmare. He was the one who had first warned her, the one who had brought the drive to her in the first place, telling her it was important, telling her to be careful. But now, as he stepped into the room, his face was unreadable, his eyes dark with something she couldn't quite place. "Victor, what are you?" Lily began, her voice trembling with fear, but Victor cut her off with a look that could freeze anyone in their tracks. "Lily, don't," he said, his tone low and laced with a kind of finality that made her heart sink. "It's not what you think. None of it. I didn't want you to get caught up in this." But now, he stopped himself, taking a deep breath before continuing, "It's too late." Lily's chest tightened. "What do you mean too late? What's going on? What's happening to me?" Her voice cracked with the desperation she had been trying to suppress. She had trusted Victor, too. He had been part of her life for years, part of her world before this nightmare began. But now, standing there, with the weight of his words hanging between them, it was impossible to ignore the sinking feeling that he too had been playing a role in her downfall. Victor's eyes flicked to Jake, and for the first time, Lily saw something she hadn't expected: fear. Pure, raw fear. "Lily," he said, stepping closer to her, his voice lower now, almost urgent. "You have to understand. There are forces at play here that none of us can control. You've uncovered something big. It's not just the bag, or the drive, or the messages. It's all connected, and they won't stop until it's done. They've been watching you, Lily, from the start. And the truth is more dangerous than you can imagine." Her heart hammered in her chest as the magnitude of his words sank in. "They've been watching me." Lily's thoughts spun out of control as she tried to process what he was saying. Who were they? Who had been watching her? Had she been marked from the very beginning, a target in a much larger scheme? The drive, the messages, the warnings, it all made sense now, in a twisted, horrifying way. She had been part of something she couldn't even begin to comprehend, caught in a game that was far bigger than anything she had ever imagined. "I don't understand," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "Who's behind this? What do they want?" Victor's face tightened, and he looked at Jake before speaking again, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're not ready for the truth, Lily. No one is. The people you think are your allies. They're not. You've been set up from the very beginning, and he stopped mid-sentence, as if weighing the decision. "I was supposed to stop you from digging deeper. But I couldn't. I couldn't watch you fall into their trap." The room seemed to close in on Lily as she tried to process the gravity of Victor's words. She had trusted him, believed in him, and now he was telling her that everything had been a lie. She wasn't just tangled in this conspiracy, she was the target. She had been played from the start, a pawn in someone else's game. And the worst part was, she still didn't know who the enemy truly was. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why didn't you warn me?" Victor's face twisted with regret, but there was no time for sympathy now. "Because I couldn't. They were watching me too. The people who have been pulling the strings, they don't care about your life, Lily. They don't care about anyone. All they want is power. Control. And you," he turned to Jake, his eyes hardening. "You were part of this from the beginning." Lily felt as though the floor had been ripped out from under her. Jake's cold, calculating gaze never wavered. "You've already made your choice, Lily, he said, his voice low, almost like a warning. Now, you need to decide. Will you run? Or will you stand and face the truth, knowing that once you do, there's no going back? A knot of panic twisted in Lily's stomach. There was no way to outrun this. She had known that from the start. But now, as the full scale of the conspiracy revealed itself, now that she understood how deep it went, how many people were involved, how powerful they were, her options felt almost non-existent. No matter what she did, the danger was real, and it was closing in on her fast. The door slammed open again, and Lily whipped her head around, her heart pounding in her chest. Another figure stepped into the room, a man in a dark suit, his face obscured by shadows. She didn't recognize him, but the cold look in his eyes sent a chill down her spine. The man spoke, his voice smooth, but dripping with a kind of authority that made Lily's blood run cold. It's time, Lily. You've been asking the wrong questions, and now it's time to pay the price for it. And just like that, everything Lily had been running from, everything she had been trying to figure out, seemed to converge on this single moment. This was no longer just about a bag, a message, or a missing piece of the puzzle. This was about power, control. And the ultimate question Lily would have to face, was she willing to pay the price for the truth? The stakes had never been higher, and the clock was ticking. The air in the room was thick with tension as Lily stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest, her mind spinning faster than she could process. The man in the suit, the one who had just entered her apartment with that icy authority, wasn't just anyone. She recognized him now, but it took a moment for the realization to sink in. It was Mark Weston, the powerful business magnate, the face behind the company she had been researching for weeks. He had been the one who secretly funded the underground operations she had discovered. He was the one who had made sure the bag, the drive, and all the carefully orchestrated chaos had landed squarely in her lap. He was the puppet master behind everything, and now he was standing before her, cold, calculating, and completely unfazed by the storm she was caught in. Lily, you've been chasing shadows. Mark's voice sliced through the silence, his words calm, controlled. He didn't even flinch as she stepped back, as if he were used to the fear in people's eyes. You've been running, trying to put together pieces that don't fit. But the truth is much simpler than you think. His lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile, as though savoring the moment. You were never meant to find the truth. You were always just a means to an end. The words hit her like a physical blow. A means to an end. All of her sleepless nights, all of her efforts, all of the pieces she'd painstakingly put together over the last few weeks, had been for nothing. Her fears were true. This entire mess, this conspiracy, had never been about the drive, or even the strange messages. It had all been about her, from the very beginning. She had been nothing more than a pawn in a game she couldn't even comprehend. A game that was far bigger than anything she could have imagined. You're wrong, Lily managed to force out, her voice shaking, but her defiance growing. I was meant to find the truth. You thought I was too weak to understand, too insignificant. But you underestimated me. And now, I know everything. Mark's smile deepened, his eyes flashing with something darker. No, Lily. You don't know everything. You think you do, but what you have is just a small piece of a much larger puzzle. A puzzle you'll never be able to finish. He stepped closer, his presence suffocating, his words dripping with venom. You have no idea what you're dealing with. This isn't just about a few $1 million or a stolen piece of technology. This is about control. About power. About reshaping the future. And you, he paused, his gaze turning cold as ice. You were never supposed to get in the way. The room seemed to close in on her, the walls pressing down, suffocating her with the weight of his words. She could feel the tension in the air thickening like a storm cloud, and in that moment, she realized something far more chilling than any threat he could make. Mark wasn't just a businessman. He was the mastermind behind something far more sinister than she could have ever imagined. The company he ran, the one she thought was merely involved in shady dealings, was a front for something far more dangerous. This was about global influence, about a shadow network so powerful, so deeply entrenched in every layer of society, that it could erase anyone who stood in its way without a second thought. And Lily had unwittingly become the key to destroying it all. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. The strange messages. The bag that had been switched. The cryptic clues. It wasn't just about exposing corruption, it was about exposing an empire that spanned beyond her wildest imagination. And she was caught in the middle of it, just one woman trying to uncover something bigger than herself, bigger than she could handle. But Lily wasn't ready to back down. She wasn't ready to let Mark win. Her fists clenched, and despite the pounding fear in her chest, she held her ground. "You're wrong," she repeated, louder this time, her voice shaking with conviction. "I do know enough. I know about the connections you've been hiding. I know about the people you've been working with. And I know exactly who's pulling the strings behind you." Mark raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by her defiance. "And who might that be?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. Lily stepped forward, pulling the drive from her bag, the one she had risked everything to retrieve. The one that had led her down this dark path. The one that held the final piece of the puzzle. "I have everything I need right here," she said, holding it up. "It's over, Mark. The truth is out." For a moment, Mark's eyes flickered, a brief flash of panic in them. But it was gone before Lily could fully process it. He regained his composure, but she saw it now. The slightest crack in his facade. And in that moment, Lily knew she had him. She had uncovered something he never expected, a vulnerability he hadn't seen coming. He wasn't as invincible as he thought. "You really believe that?" Mark laughed, the sound hollow and unsettling. "You think that little piece of data changes everything? You don't know what you're up against. You've no idea what you're about to unleash." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, silver device. "I think it's time you learned exactly who you're dealing with." Before Lily could react, he pressed a button, and the room was flooded with a sharp, blinding light. The air crackled with tension, and for a moment, she couldn't see anything but flashes of white. Panic surged through her, her heart racing as she stumbled back, disoriented. She tried to shield her eyes, but it was no use. The light was blinding, the world around her spinning, and in that moment, she felt completely powerless. But then, everything stopped. The light flickered out, and the room returned to its dim state. Lily blinked rapidly, trying to regain her senses, but the device in Mark's hand was gone. In its place, a new figure emerged from the shadows, a figure she hadn't seen before, but whose presence filled the room with a suffocating tension. It was Emma. Her face was pale, her eyes wild with fear, but there was something else in her expression now, something darker. Something that made Lily's blood run cold. "You shouldn't have done this, Lily," Emma said, her voice cold and distant, as if she were someone else entirely. "You've unleashed something that can't be stopped." Lily's breath caught in her throat. "Emma!" Her heart hammered as the truth crashed down on her. Emma hadn't just been an innocent bystander. She hadn't been trying to help. She had been part of it all along, part of the very thing that had been using Lily. Emma was one of them. Mark smiled, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "You see, Lily, it's not about the drive. It's never been about the drive. It's about trust. And the moment you placed your trust in the wrong people, you sealed your own fate." In that instant, everything Lily thought she knew shattered. The drive, the messages, the cryptic clues, they were all part of the illusion. The truth was far darker than she could have imagined. Emma, Mark, Jake, they had all been playing her from the beginning. The weight of it hit her like a tidal wave, and she realized with gut-wrenching clarity that she was standing at the precipice. She could go forward, take the truth and expose everything, but at what cost? Or she could walk away, let the pieces fall where they may, and live the rest of her life knowing the cost of her silence. The choice was hers, but the world would never be the same again. Lily stood there, her mind in a haze, the weight of everything crashing down on her all at once. The faces in front of her, the people she had trusted, the ones who had been by her side at one point, were no longer the familiar faces she thought they were. Emma, Mark, Jake, they had all been playing their parts, weaving a tangled web that Lily had been caught in from the very start. The drive, the cryptic messages, the mysterious bag switch in the elevator, it had all led to this moment, but now that she stood on the precipice of understanding everything, she wasn't sure if knowing the truth was worth the price. Could she live with the knowledge of how deeply she had been manipulated? Could she live with the fact that the very people she had tried to save were the ones who had pushed her toward the darkness? But in the silence of that room, something inside Lily shifted. She had spent so many sleepless nights, trying to unravel a puzzle that had no easy answers. She had been so consumed by the idea of the conspiracy, of the lies, of the people who had played her like a game, that she hadn't allowed herself to ask the most important question of all: what happens now? She looked at Emma, the person who had been her closest ally, the one who had been with her every step of the way, only to reveal that she, too, had been a part of this web of deceit. But in Emma's eyes, there was no joy, no satisfaction in her betrayal. There was only a raw, unspoken regret. She didn't want this, Lily realized. Emma had been trapped, too, just as much as she had. But where Emma had failed to find a way out, Lily had somehow stumbled into it. "You have to understand," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to be a part of this. I was trying to protect you, but I couldn't. Not anymore." Lily's heart ached, a pang of sorrow and anger mixing together. "You should have told me. I could have helped you."